So I just finished watching the Time for School video, and I found it really interesting to be able to see the lives of different children in the different countries throughout the world. We were able to see life in Afghanistan, Brazil, India, and Japan, and able to follow some children throughout their journeys. And I found it very interesting to see the life of the Japanese student compared to the other three countries. It's completely different. There's a ton more opportunities, and the education seems to be of a much higher quality. It was very fascinating to me to see how the schools in Japan handled the education and what they taught the children, and not only that, but the organization. It seemed to be very well organized, and they have set goals with the children from a very young age, so they all know what they're getting into. I did find it very fascinating that they did state that they have lessened the load or lightened the load of the children in Japan and by taking away Saturday school. However, they say by doing so and by lightening that load, that they're creating a class of students that are underachievers, and they're not liking what's happening in that country. They feel like they're creating a lower, or say a less valuable group of students, a generation. And then when we go into India, I found that to be very interesting as well, as we followed the children there, learning that many of them don't even learn how to read, write, or do mathematics, and then finding out the girls who desire to study and further their education there. Most of them were required to go to night school and do that because they were working for their family, taking care of the goats, cooking, and doing those sorts of chores during the day. So they weren't able to go to school during that time. And I did find it very sad that when that girl from India had to stop going to night school because there wasn't enough students, and so it kind of set her back. And when she did attempt to go into day school, she wasn't able to get in the level that she would desire with her age group. And so she was with second graders, and her being an older girl, that was very hard for her and would be very rough. And she did end up dropping out of school. She had to kind of give up her dream because of the circumstances she was in. She wasn't given the opportunity, and she didn't even have the support from her family. They don't see the point in a girl studying and learning, because all she's supposed to do, in their perspective, is to learn how to cook and take care of the farm and the farm animals, and that she was going to marry a well-educated man, and that she would be happy that way, and that's how she's going to have a successful and happy life. But when she was younger, she had wanted to open up a school, and obviously she doesn't continue her education. She's not going to be able to fulfill that dream to the extent that she might like. And then if we go into Brazil and we look in the life of Jefferson, he grew up in the slums, and he started going to school because the government began paying for parents to keep their children in schools to try and limit the amount of children who are uneducated. And that's actually had a great success over there in Brazil. And we actually saw how it affected Jefferson himself. He was very intelligent and actually was able to skip a grade, and he ended up being in the same grade as his older sister. The sad aspect of that is that while he was in that same grade as his sister before he would have gone on to middle school, he actually was not able to graduate because the school board felt that it was too early for him to go, that he would actually have a harder time being with those older children and that type of environment because he was younger. However, his grades were sufficient and he could have graduated with them. And so seeing him have to sit there and watch the rest of his classmates graduate was pretty sad. And obviously he would have enjoyed and loved to graduate. And I personally feel that he would have been able to do so, and he would have been very successful in the older grades. And I'm kind of nervous to see what happens with him staying back. I almost feel like it's going to be the same thing that happened to the girl in India, where she ended up dropping out of school and she wasn't able to further her education. So that might happen to Jefferson, as he had to stay back a year. He might feel weird, even though he's going to be with the kids the same age. His education level is going to be higher, and he might feel like he's being held back and not able to go to his full potential. And then watching the kids in Afghanistan, it was interesting that said the Taliban does everything they can to keep the girls out of school, and most Afghan women are illiterate. They also said the girls or the boys there, they don't have to do any work, and so the girls do everything. And that seemed to be a common factor in most of the countries, that the girls did most of the work while the men just played. The girl there, Suvika, she worked very hard, and she also did all the chores for her family and cooked and did all those things during the day or after school. And so she didn't have time to do her homework. She was able to go to day school, but she was unable to really dedicate herself to studying. She had to take care of the household chores. While the boys, on the other hand, they'd go to school and they'd come home. They could do their homework if they like, but most of the time it appeared that they were out playing and having fun. I found it really cool that 189 countries committed that in 2015 there should be free primary education to the students in those countries. However, 75 million of the world's children are still waiting for that, and they have that desire to grow. And perhaps they don't have that desire to go to school because it hasn't been implemented in their life. They haven't seen the effects of it, and they haven't really heard much about it, seeing as how their family and lots of these circumstances are unable to pay for their education. So I think that'll be a really good stepping stone for these countries when that primary education is free. I do know that there's lots of children who just can't go to school because their family can't afford it. And I feel like once we were able to get those 75 million children into school, we'll be able to see an increase in lifestyle. And I also feel like the poverty level will decline. I did notice as well that in these different schools, for lots of the kids, it became a refuge. It became the place where they wanted to be. They didn't want to necessarily be doing those chores and living in the slums. They found joy in learning and loved that environment. And it's not that they were ungrateful or they didn't want to help in their home chores, but they did feel like they could be more of a child. I feel like learning and actually like they're doing something for themselves. That sense of progress that we all strive for, that eternal need to progress and grow, was definitely inside of each of these children. You can see that their full potential that they want to become, and it's something that we all have. If we stop progressing in life, we're not getting closer to coming to our Heavenly Father. And that's something that everybody has within inside themselves, even if they don't quite understand it. So overall, I really think that was a great video. It did open my eyes to see how blessed we are to have had the education we've received to this point, and that we're able to continue furthering it, that we don't really have the limitations or trials that those children have in those other countries. So I'm glad that we were able to watch that.